A Great Escape. Cad Bane and his notorious crew of bounty hunters liberated Ziro the Hutt from a Republic prison after holding the Galactic Senate hostage. The Jedi Council has assigned Obi-Wan Kenobi to retrieve Ziro the Hutt with the help of Jedi Knight Quinlan Vos. Unknown to the Jedi, we find Ziro in the clutches of the 5 Hutt families on the distant world of Nal Hutta.
Once again, Bucketheads, Mayvar Tigar. Welcome to the 111th Size Snoodles singing episode of Mandovision. Nargai Tom, and thank you so much for checking out this small, independent Star Wars podcast. Remember, the best way to reach out to us is, of course, over social media at Mando_Vision on Twitter and Instagram. You can email the show, mandovisiontom@gmail.com. Please be sure you're liking, subscribing, and sharing the show with all the other Mandalorians in your covert. If possible or so inclined, remember 5-star reviews are an insanely great way, a great and easy way to help support the show. Write us a 5-star review, and hey, maybe get it read on the show. We'll see how it goes. And again, they truly help the small independent shows like us, and we truly, truly appreciate your time and your efforts. Welcome back to the Enclave, Bucketheads. We're so glad you're here. This is a tumultuous time in the Mandovision podcast, as we have a very makeshift studio, as we have not found our own new covert just yet. It's everything's, I mean, like, we have an abode, but like, where will the show be homed? Where will I set up the studio space? These are the questions that are still to be determined as the moving in process has begun. And let me tell you, I'm not having fun. This is a pain in the butt, and anybody who's moved, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's now it's all about the spatial relations and spatial dynamics and figuring out what goes where, and then once that's sort of determined, then I can kind of plan around like where I'm going to set up shop for the podcast in the future. Right now we're in a very makeshift location in the living room on a table. You probably can hear a bit of an echo. I'm sorry about that. I'll try to keep that as low as possible. Yeah, we're just kind of dealing with it. We're kind of rolling with the punches a little bit today, and that's just gonna be the way it is for at least for this episode. Hopefully, for not too many more after this. But yeah, there's a possibility you'll hear a similar setup for the next episode as well. We'll just have to see how quickly we can kind of get things settled in the new environment here. But I'm so glad you're back. I'm so glad I'm back, and that we can kind of pick up where we left off, because when we spoke last, we did Evil Plans, which bookends an episode we've already seen, which was the finale to season 1, and now we're catching back up with those events of Cad Bane freeing Ziro the Hutt, Cad Bane having taken the Senate hostage, and the repercussions of that. And we sort of in that last episode in Evil Plans, we saw how that plan came to be. Who was it that hired Cad Bane to spring Ziro the Hutt from the prison? And it was the head of the 5 Hutt families, the criminal syndicate of the Hutts, freeing Ziro. But for what reason? And we get into that some more in this episode. And it's a really good episode. We also get to meet up with Quinlan Vos, Obi-Wan Kenobi. We go to Nal Hutta, the home world of the Hutts. And it's an interesting episode. And we catch up with an old character from Return of the Jedi, who kind of gets a new little element added to her backstory, which is a lot of fun too. So yeah, let's talk about it a little bit more. You know what you have to do first, of course. And I'll tell you what. let's not do that just yet. Let's go ahead and get some of the particulars out of the way for this episode so that we can get into it all at the appropriate time. So, Season 3, Episode 9, Hunt for Ziro. Our plot this week, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Quinlan Vos are assigned to retrieve Ziro the Hutt after his escape from prison. But Ziro is instantly put on trial by the 5 Hutt families on Nal Hutta, where his only ally may be an old lover. It's a tale as old as time, isn't it, folks? The Jedi fortune cookie for this episode is love comes in all shapes and sizes. Clearly, we're talking to about the girth of the Hutts and the small frame and physique of Sai Snoodles herself. Let's talk a little bit more about that. This week's episode directed by Seward Lee, who's done a great many episodes this in the entire run of the series thus far. And you get Stephen Long Mitchell and Craig W. Van Sickle. Our main voice cast this week: Corey Burton is Ziro the Hutt and Cad Bane. James Arnold Taylor is once again Obi-Wan Kenobi. Nika Futterman she gets to spread her wings a little bit. Gets to be Sai Snoodles and Gardula the Hutt. Al Rodrigo is Quinlan Vos. Angelica Perrin is Mama the Hutt. MF80 and Chorus Girl. D. Bradley Baker is Cody and Orok the Hutt. Seth Green returns as Toto 360. Kevin Michael Richardson is Jabba the Hutt and Marlo the Hutt. Tom Kane, our narrator for this week's episode. And I think that pretty much takes care of all the particulars, right? We got the Jedi fortune cookie, we got our cast, we got our writers, directors. Yeah, so it's time. You know what time it is. The time you've been waiting for. And I know a bunch of you guys out there, you're ready to go. Before, you hit play and you're ready. You know that bucket's on. But for everybody else who's not paying attention, it's time. Strap on your buckets. Let's go.
Hey, Commander, looking good? Kenobi, you look worse for wear. How's temple life?
Good to see you too.
Yes, well, if you could tell time half as well as you could stick a landing, we wouldn't be behind schedule now, would we?
Well, that's your opinion, man.
Let's get down to business.
So there we go, our introduction to Quinlan Vos right there off the bat. And I know we've talked about Quinlan a lot in recent months, but he is one of my favorite characters. And for anyone new to the podcast, if you haven't listened to that older episode where we spent some time going into Quinlan's backstory, he's a character who was originally created in the Dark Horse comic book series, based off of a character in the background of a scene in The Phantom Menace. So kind of a interesting dynamic with how that character kind of came to be in the old Dark Horse Clone Wars comic book. And his popularity with the fans sort of, I think, must have inspired some of the creators over at the Clone Wars series. And like, hey, why don't we bring this Jedi over? And they did it with a handful of Jedi characters from Dark Horse's comic book. Ayla Secura, one of the more famous ones, because she made it into the Revenge of the Sith in Episode 3. So there is precedent for this, but Quinlan Vos, one of those fan favorite characters from that comic book run, that is, they're harder to find nowadays than they used to be. But maybe that will change now that Dark Horse has regained a bit of a publishing license with some Star Wars properties. Maybe that'll urge Marvel to kind of bring back some of their older Clone Wars tales, and we can kind of revisit Quinlan Vos in print form once again. Again, a character that I really am partial to. His introduction in this episode he's a little bit different than what we get to know from the comic books and from some other appearances in various media. But his one shining attribute that comes through is his force abilities, his ability to pick up an object and use the force to read that object. That is one of the abilities that has successfully made the transition from the comic books to the Clone Wars series. So really nice ability to have, I think, and a rare one for a Jedi too as well, to be able to find an object and use the Force to determine what exactly occurred with the possession of this object. It's used really well in this episode. They only used it the one time. There is a deleted scene later in the episode where he gets to use it a second time in order to help track down Ziro and Sai Snoodles. And again, Quinlan is a favorite of mine. He and Kenobi seem to have a bit more of a contentious relationship than is generally kind of accepted to be about the characters, because they grew up as Padawans together. And so there are many tales of them on adventures as young Padawans. And they have a strong friendship and a strong bond. Obi-Wan in this episode seems sort of wary of Quinlan and his sort of antics. And again, that's keeping with Kenobi's character, but Again, this is a character that we know as fans who are familiar with Quinlan, that he actually has a really deep connection to Quinlan and a fondness for that character. And we get to see that shine a light on that better. Excuse me. We shine a light better on that in the Dark Disciple novel that we talked about a few months back, which highlights Quinlan Vos and Asajj Ventress. That was supposed to be based on episodes for the final season of the Clone Wars before Disney canceled the show after they acquired Star Wars and Lucasfilms. And again, that's fleshed out better. That relationship is fleshed out better and shown in a really nice way in that novel. In this, again, it's a lot of surface stuff because, again, you have a really condensed episode. But this is a really strong episode at the same time. And I like the pairing of Kenobi and Quinlan. I wish we had gotten to see more of this throughout the course of the series. It would have been a lot of fun to see Kenobi and Anakin kind of paired up with more Jedis who are different from them in many different ways, not just the way they use the Force, the way they use their lightsaber, but just in their personalities and sort of their way of going about doing things. And again, that is something that Quinlan is known for, is his unique way of doing things as a Jedi Knight. So again, a great character that I'm really excited to see in this episode that we get to spend some time with. And they are assigned to track down Ziro the Hutt. And everyone seems to know that, well, they're going to, we find out very quickly that Quinlan has intelligence indicating that the 5 Hutt families, the Hutt syndicates, they're the ones who sprung Ziro. So they're going to go to Nal Hutta. They're going to meet with Gardula and some of the other heads of the family. We talked about them in Evil Plans when we got to see them. You have like the Don Corleone looking Hutt, and you have Hutts are kind of inspired visually from old gangster movies. And that's fine. The Hutts are sort of they're sort of a species that the film has never defined super clearly. We know a lot about them through other forms of media, through books and novels and comic books and again, through the Clone Wars. And so one of the things that's kind of developed over the years is that Hutts do have very distinct personalities and sort of ways of trying to emulate other species in the galaxy, and because they seem to have a sort of sense of inadequacy about their own physical appearance. Except the exception of Jabba. Jabba seems to be the overtly confident Hutt who has no problem being Jabba the frickin' Hutt, and he kind of owns it. Gardula is a character we spent some time with in this episode. You may remember she made her first appearance in The Phantom Menace. She's there with Jabba on Tatooine for the pod races, for the Boonta Eve Classic, if you will. So she gets a little bit more limelight. We get to see her as a powerful member of the Hutts. And a lot of this episode seems to be really really centered on the Jabba's plans for sort of usurping the power from the Jedi, from the Hutt Council, to elevate himself. As we get to the end of the episode, we really get to see that kind of crystallize as we realize that he was the one who put Sly Snoodles on the tail. He brought her aboard to get Ziro's book, to get Ziro's database, his diary, his journal that has all the nefarious, illegal activities of the Hutt Council documented. And now he's going to use this to consolidate his base of power and his influence within the cartel. Classic Jabba move, classic Jabba power move, if you will. So I really dug that. I like that aspect of it. I like spending time with Jabba and kind of seeing how he kind of became like the Hutt that we all know so much. Because again, when he's killed in Jedi, and one of the things I think we're going to see in the Book of Boba Fett is sort of the crazy fallout. Like what exactly has happened to Jabba's empire in the wake of his death and Return of the Jedi. It's been 5 years. We saw Bib Fortuna was on his throne in some capacity, but it looks like whatever influence and power Jabba had, Bib Fortuna whittled away. But what role did the rest of the Hutt cartel have to play in it? Was there something that happened between the rest of the cartel? Or did they isolate Bib Fortuna? Or are they no longer present too because Jabba dismissed all of them and usurped all of their property and territory and titles as well? So there's a lot to sort of get to with the Hutts because we don't know much about where they are after Return of the Jedi. The Clone Wars is where we spent the most of our time with the Hutt clans. So I am very intrigued if this is something we will get to explore more fully in the Book of Boba Fett, which will be, of course, be out in mere weeks. And I'm very excited by that possibility. I want to talk about our introduction to Cy Snoodles in this episode because I had completely forgotten that there was a musical number in Star Wars The Clone Wars. This had completely escaped my memory banks. I did not recall this at all. So when this scene came up, this musical number with these three dancers wearing these giant Hutt headpieces to sort of resemble them as Hutts in a bit of a musical number, a cabaret sort of esque moment for the show. It really kind of, I was like, oh, are they doing a musical number here? And there were little notes, little elements to that music, that song that was played out as we watched these dancers with those headpieces on move around. And I'm like, there's something triggering in my ear, like something's hitting my eardrum. And I'm like, wait, I know this. This is familiar to me. Why do I know this? And of course, it comes to me in really quick time because I am such a fan of this film that I was like, wait, is this what we're doing here? Is this? And it is, of course, a sort of Star Wars-ized rendition of Anything Goes from the opening of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, which you may remember Kate Capshaw's opening number, the whole thing. That's a really crazy, wild introduction, a musical number to open up the second Indiana Jones movie. And of course, that's centered at Club Obi-Wan. Steven Spielberg's shout out to George Lucas, naming his club in downtown Hong Kong, Club Obi-Wan. And of course, this is also when Obi-Wan will make his appearance in this episode again with the Hutt Council as this number ends. And this is this episode, this musical number focuses on introducing Cy Snoodles, a character from the original trilogy that many older fans like myself know as a character that got sort of heightened a little. I don't know if heightened is the right word I want to use. Let's put it this way. Back in my day, when I saw Return of the Jedi in the theaters in 1983, yes, indeed, I am that old, the musical number in Return of the Jedi featuring Cy Snoodles and the Max Rebo Band was a much smaller, much more contained musical number. But I loved it. I thought it was charming and endearing, and I loved the puppeteering was phenomenal. So I have this affinity for the Max Rebo Band as it was in the original trilogy, and it's nice Cy Snoodles' performance in that. When the special editions came about in the late 90s, that was one of the musical numbers that George Lucas wanted to go back into because he wanted it to be bigger and more grandiose and like this whole thing. And it's fine, I guess. It allowed them more opportunity to like sneak in a few extra seconds of Boba Fett, doing various things around Jabba's palace, like hanging out with girls and doing things, nodding at things. But it's not the same song, and I guess my nostalgia for that original song from Return of the Jedi is sort of one of the things that bums me out about that new sequence in the special editions, which are not called the special editions anymore. Remember, you just go on Disney Plus and you put on Return of the Jedi, and that's what you get. That's what it is. And again, not my favorite, correction, but it wasn't one of the more egregious things, in my opinion, that they changed for the special editions. And they CGI'd Cy Snoodles into that, so that you could have her snout and the lips on her snout kind of doing more animated things and kind of make the singing more noticeable, more in tune with what they wanted to go for. Like I said, it's one of the scenes that doesn't, I'm just kind of blah about it. I was like, oh, whatever, it's fine, whatever. But I have an affinity for that old one. It's just like Yub Nub. I miss Yub Nub. They don't have Yub Nub in the new versions, and I miss me some Yub Nub. I do. I've talked about it before. But yeah, I thought this was a rather fun way to introduce Cy Snoodles into the Star Wars: The Clone Wars series, and again, we focus on our Jedi fortune cookie. Love comes in all shapes and sizes, and we find out when she learns that Ziro is there in the compound, in I guess like what the Hutts are considering to be like protective custody, because he maintains possession of that diary, of that journal, of all their nefarious activities that would apparently get them all arrested or whatnot, or given to their enemies, probably get them all killed, something along those lines. We find out that they are, in fact, an item. They have a history, a relationship as lovers, and all shapes and sizes. And Ziro is very clearly trying to manipulate Snoodles into freeing him, into doing these things, and he's not even very clever about it. But we're sort of given the impression that Cy Snoodles is just dumbstruck in love with Ziro the Hutt, and will go along with anything he says in order to kind of, stay in his to I guess to love her booby man, and whatever. And that's sort of how the episode plays out. And it's not until we get to the end when they go off world and we get to Teth, and we go to Ziro's father's grave to recover the database, the journal, whatever what you want to call it. That Cy Snoodles turns the tables on Ziro, kills him, takes the book, and that is the end of Ziro the Hutt and then that story. Really interesting. I like the turn. I like the twist. And then at the very, very end, we get to the part where we find out that, yes, she has been sent by Jabba the Hutt. He has brought her to Tatooine to recover the book. She's basically done the work of a bounty hunter, showing up Cad Bane in the process. And now she is going to be gainfully in the employ of Jabba the Hutt on Tatooine. And it's going to be very exciting for her because I'm assuming Max Rebo is going to be coming up and like, hey, I need a singer. Let's jam this out at the Tatooine Palace. Why not? So let's talk about Teth real quick because I did want to mention. Yes, I think we all remember Teth from the movie, from the Star Wars: The Clone Wars, the opening movie. At the top of that one mountain, the Bomar monk monastery is there, and again, that an interesting connection to the Hutts and to Jabba with this world that the Bomar monks were on, and they had a palace at, and this is where the big battle takes place, where Anakin and Ahsoka are scaling vertically up that mountaintop to get to the Citadel, to get to that palace. And then, of course, obviously, as we know, Jabba has a connection to the Bomar monks because he kicked them out of one of their monasteries on Tatooine. Because those Bomar monks, they like the isolated, they like the remote, they like the quiet. And Jabba seems to let them do all the building and then kick them all out and take over. That seems to be his move. He's like the landlord from Nal Hutta. That's a dumb joke. Oh boy, that is a dumb joke. But yeah, so yes, in case you are familiar, yes, we have been to Teth before. It is from the Clone Wars movie, and it does have some more overt, or not even overt, like just some subtle connections to Jabba and the other Hutts as it relates to the films. And I like that. I did. I'm not going to lie. I like it when we get to connect the dots a little bit here. I wasn't crazy. The scene in this episode that I'm not crazy about is the scene where we're going through the swamplands of Nal Hutta. We've made our escape from the Hutt Citadel, and they're on the sort of the equivalent of like a hovercraft. Like we're in the Everglades, or like we're in like swamp country, and we're in the bayou in Louisiana, and we go to this remote hut built up over the swampland, and we meet Ziro's mother. One of probably the biggest hut we've ever seen in any sort of media thus far. And it's a weird sort of, to me, it is a weird sort of, again, it has like that Bayou Cajun Creole kind of thing going on where they're trying to play like Down Home in the Swamp, like a Swamp People TV show or something. And it doesn't quite work for me, and I don't quite know why we're doing it. We're sort of getting some information about Ziro and his family, but it's not going to matter very much in the end because of what happens to Ziro. Ziro's dead. It's over. So what are we talking about here with his dead brother and his estranged mother and their connection to each other? If you watch some of the deleted scenes for this episode, there is some different dialogue in here that implies that Jabba has more of an antagonistic role in this episode in the original draft of the script. Things were changed at some point to incorporate more of the Hutt Council and these aspects of the story. So I don't know if maybe they just couldn't change that scene, so they tried to rework it as best they can. But ultimately, it just serves to find Ziro a spaceship, a way off planet, a way to get off Nal Hutta and go to Teth, because that's where he has to go to get the journal. And I think there could have been an easier way to do that, but I don't know. Again, I don't know what changed in the writing process. I don't know what changed in the animation process, if that's what spurred some of these decisions, or if it was a last-minute thing. I don't know for sure. I do like our time with the Jedi amongst the Hutt Council. I always find the Jedi's diplomacy with criminal organizations to be a fascinating aspect of their order. Obi-Wan makes the whole thing about Bane at the end of the episode because again, we'll talk about that part a little bit later. But with again, the Jedi are for peace and justice in the galaxy, yet they're willing to go and negotiate and barter these deals with the Hutts, and it's very interesting how the Jedi, you know, I don't want to go too deep on this because it merits it. While it merits a fuller conversation, this episode is not the place for it. But you can, I think the argument's been made by many others at many other times. But are the Jedi really advocates for peace and justice across the galaxy, or are they advocates for the status quo? An interesting thing to talk about sometime down the road, and maybe we'll get to talk about that a little bit more. Because again, in the Book of Boba Fett, we may get some backstory stuff that illuminates sort of the history that all these characters have with one another. And even in the time of the High Republic books, they talk about the Hutts and how many Jedi are sort of offended by the idea of working with the Hutts. And it's a complicated issue. And again, it'd be fun to dive into it sometime. But I enjoyed Anakin. Excuse me. I enjoyed Obi-Wan and Quinlan, kind of bartering, negotiating with the Hutts. Again, this is the sequence where Quinlan finds the cup that Ziro discards to let him know that yes, indeed, Ziro has been there, has been seen with the Hutt Council, and that's that. And then that's how we kind of move about things. Now, the Hutt Council, unaware of Sice Noodle's plan, that she's going to break him out of prison, that she has a connection to him. So when the Hutts find out that Ziro is gone, they bring back Cad Bane to once again track down Ziro this time and hopefully recover the book. So Cad Bane, he even makes a pretty amusing reference about how he keeps getting paid for the same job over and over again. And that's exactly what it is this time around, except he gets shown up. He gets shown up by Sice Noodles for doing his job basically for him. And he's not going to be too stoked about that, I don't think. And then at some point, when on Teth, again, there's like some good cat and mouse between the Jedi and Cad on Nal Hutta, as he's attempting to get around them, get ahead of them in the search for Ziro. There's some good stuff there, but what sort of struck me as odd in the episode was on Teth, as the Jedi find Ziro's body and Cad Bane's like, whoa, I didn't do that. Why does Cad care? I guess is what I'm kind of wondering. Now, I guess if you want to stick around and be like, I didn't do that, see ya. But instead, it seems like Cad's trying to propose like some kind of team up or something like that, and it takes Obi-Wan Kenobi to be like, hey, by the way, you just tried to kill a bunch of senators, so like we're not going to forget about that and let that slide, and that spurs them into battle against one another. And it's a really good battle. It's a fun sequence to watch. Obi-Wan and Quinlan versus Cad Bane. The Jedi love their 2-against-1 methodology of attacking. But as usual, the Jedi apparently need 2 people to attack one person because that one person is pretty darn formidable. And we get to see Cad Bane be a formidable foe for our Jedi Knights. But it's a fun action sequence, and there's some good stuff in there. I'm not going to talk about when the Jedi go to Mama the Hutt's house, because again, I find that's like sort of the one element to this episode that I find a little bit too much for me personally. It's fine. It doesn't detract from my enjoyment of the episode. I'm just sort of wondering what purpose it kind of serves other than Ziro to get a spaceship. That's kind of all it's there for. I don't know why we're getting sort of like these allusions to Ziro's backstory, because I don't think it factors much further into anything else going on during the run of the Clone Wars, if memory serves. Now, I could bite my words on that. I could be eating my words, 2 seasons from now, and then when something comes up about Ziro's history and his, some sort of familial thing with Jabba the Hutt that I've completely forgotten about. So that'll be interesting to see if I'm right or wrong on that one. Anyways, that is The Hunt for Ziro. Season 3, Episode 9. Again, I think this is a really nice episode. It's a lot of fun. Good stuff with the Jedi, good stuff with the Hutt clans. Again, I like seeing these Hutt clans. As long as you're not offended by not offended is a strong word. As long as you don't think it's too silly, the way some of these Hutt lords are kind of modeled after, gangster movies from the early part of the 20th century, or even the late 20th century, I guess, because Corleone's like the 70s, right? As long as that doesn't bother you too much, I think this episode is very, very good. I give it 7.5 stars, 7.5 buckets, and I think if you caught me in the right mood, it'd probably even get 8, because there's a lot of elements here I like. I want to spend more time with the Hutt clans. I want to understand the Hutt clans more. Maybe that's something we get with Book of Boba Fett. Maybe that's something we get in the Bad Batch. I don't know. We have a galaxy of possibilities here, and that's always exciting. I always love that, and that is good news. So more of this one, please. And we are about to get into some serious stuff in season 3 for Star Wars: The Clone Wars. So please stay tuned. We have a lot of good episodes coming up, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch those, break those down with everybody. And yeah, so let me give everyone a bit of an update on what's going on as far as our schedule goes. The plan is and always will be to have 2 episodes out a week. I am striving very hard to get back onto that track. If it doesn't happen, again, I will post on something on social media, give everyone kind of a heads up, keep you in the loop on things. But the plan's always to do the 2. Always to do the 2. But if we have to miss an episode here and there, I apologize in advance for that. It's just there's, again, a lot of things going on in the new homestead that need to be kind of handled and addressed, and oftentimes it costs me the free time that I usually have for podcasting. So please take my apologies and accept my apology in advance, and just make sure you're liking, subscribing, sharing the show, and you got to subscribed in your feed, and when the new ones drop, they're going to pop right in there, and you'll be all set anyways. So that's the good news. But yeah, the plan is still to try and get the two a week out, Mondays and Fridays, hopefully. Fingers crossed. I'm Ron Burgundy. I know. But that being said, if there is an interruption, if there is another set of hiccups to that show, to us covering the Clone Wars for the time being, again, stay tuned on social media. But no matter what happens, the Book of Boba Fett shows will happen day of release. Okay, so Book of Boba Fett will drop at midnight. We'll all watch it whenever we can, and that evening, the evening of that first day, is when I plan to have those episodes out and ready for your consumption, so that whenever you get to watch the Book of Boba Fett, you'll be able to have the podcast to go to, and you'll be locked and loaded and ready to go. Again, that's a few weeks away. I hope to have the show way back on track before that, but just know that that is the plan for Book of Boba Fett, okay? All right, we're going to get out of here. Thank you all so much for listening. Thank you for being patient with me while the show was on a bit of a hiatus, a break, while I was relocating the Buckethead Studios, the Mandovision Studios. Please remember to follow us on social media. We're at Mando_Vision on Twitter and Instagram. Email the show, mandovisiontom@gmail.com. And again, like, subscribe, share the show with all the other Mandalorians in your covert. We truly, truly appreciate it. And yeah, let's get out of here. I hope to be back with you all very, very soon, because again, we have some good episodes coming up, and I don't want to stop just yet. Just now, I want to get through these. I want to get through these and get into Boba Fett. Oh, it's gonna be fun. I'm so excited. Great time to be a Star Wars fan, as always. So let's do this. This is the Mandovision Podcast. My name is Tom. Our guy Tom. And remember, this podcast can only end one way. This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way.